I still remember that night like it was carved into my soul. The way her voice trembled, the way her eyes refused to meet mine. "Amy, I went to the police to report my husband," she whispered, her fingers cold, her lips shaking. But they believed him instead. Those words tore something inside me that has never healed. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the salt sting the corners of my mouth. I just sat there, staring at my daughter, wondering how the world could be so cruel, how truth could be so easily dismissed when it came from a woman's lips. But before that night, before everything broke, we were just an ordinary family. Ordinary and happy. My name is Shazia. I used to think I knew what happiness looked like. For me, it was the sound of laughter in our small living room, the smell of fresh chai in the morning, and the sight of my daughter, Sana, humming softly as she combed her hair before college. Sana was my pride, my only child. A quiet soul, but full of warmth, the kind of girl who would give away her umbrella in the rain and walk home drenched just to see someone else smile. I used to tell her, "You have your father's eyes but my heart," and she'd laugh and say, "Then that means I'll always see the world through love, Amy." Back then, I believed love could protect her from anything. My husband, Imran, was a man of discipline and structure. He wasn't unkind, but he was firm. He believed in strength, in pride, in not showing weakness. "The world eats those who cry too easily," he'd often say, and I foolishly used to admire that. I thought it made him dependable. But sometimes, that same hardness made our home colder than it needed to be. Still, we were stable. Sana adored her father. She'd sit with him after dinner, discussing books, politics, sometimes dreams. He'd nod and smile, proud of her intelligence. I'd watch them from the kitchen doorway, thinking, my family is complete. Then came Adil. He first came into our lives one spring afternoon. A relative's son, well-spoken, polite, educated. He was an engineer, ambitious, respectful, with the kind of smile that instantly gained trust. I remember the way he spoke to me, addressing me as auntie with such grace that even Imran was impressed. Sana's cheeks turned pink the first time she spoke to him. I noticed it, the small, nervous smile, the way her voice softened. I didn't say anything, but I felt it, that gentle stirring of something new in her heart. A few weeks later, his family sent a proposal. Imran was happy, maybe too happy. "He's from a good family," he said, "educated, stable, no bad habits. Sana will live comfortably." And I smiled, but something in me hesitated. Maybe it was a mother's instinct. Maybe it was nothing. But I remember looking at Adil that day, during the engagement, and feeling a strange chill when his eyes met mine, not cold, not cruel, but unreadable. Like there was something behind that charm. I brushed it off. Every mother worries, every daughter grows. I told myself I was just overprotective. The wedding was beautiful, golden lights, laughter, music, the scent of jasmine filling the air. Sana glowed in her bridal dress, her eyes shimmering with dreams. "Amy, I'm so lucky," she whispered as I adjusted her dupatta. "Adil makes me feel safe." Safe. I remember those words because they haunt me now. The irony of them. The way she said them with such certainty, as if love was an armor, not a gamble. When she left our home that night, her hands filled with mehndi and her eyes filled with tears, I stood by the door watching her car fade away. The house felt empty the moment she turned the corner. I told myself this is every mother's ache, but it wasn't just that. It was something deeper, like a quiet warning I couldn't understand. At first, everything seemed fine. Sana would call often, her voice cheerful, talking about their new apartment, the little dinners they shared, the gifts he bought her. I tried to believe her happiness. But sometimes, there were pauses, small silences between her sentences that spoke louder than words. Once during a call, I heard Adil's voice in the background, sharp, impatient. She quickly said, "I'll call you later, Amy," and hung up. I tried to ignore it. I told myself all couples argue. Still, I couldn't shake the unease that settled in my chest. A few weeks later, she came home for a visit. The moment I saw her at the door, I felt something was off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hands fidgeted. She hugged me too tightly, the kind of hug people give when they're trying not to fall apart. "How's married life?" I asked lightly, trying to sound casual. She hesitated, It's good, he's just very particular, Amy. You know how some people are about cleanliness and time and everything. She forced a laugh, but her eyes darted away. I didn't want to press her. I wanted her to trust me enough to open up, not shut down. So I nodded and changed the subject. But when she rolled up her sleeves to wash dishes later, I saw faint marks, thin lines near her wrist, barely visible but real. My heart clenched. Sana, what's that? She froze for a second, then smiled too quickly. Oh, this, I burned myself on the oven. I'm fine, Amy. She looked fine, but her eyes looked like they were carrying a storm. That night when Imran came home, I told him quietly, something's wrong with her. I can feel it. He sighed, closing his briefcase. Shazia, don't start imagining things. She's married now. Every couple fights, adjusts, learns. We can't interfere. But she doesn't sound happy. She'll learn, he interrupted, his tone final. Don't poison her mind against her husband. Poison, that word stung. I wasn't trying to poison anyone. I was trying to protect my child. But I stayed silent. Because that's what women like me were taught to do, stay silent to keep the peace. Days turned into weeks. Sana called less. When she did, her voice was distant. Amy, Adil's just been stressed from work, she'd say. Or, he doesn't like when I go out too much. He says people talk. Her laughter faded. Her world started shrinking around him. Then one evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I took the bus to her house without telling Imran. When I reached, it was almost sunset. The air was thick with humidity, the street empty except for a stray cat curled near a car. I knocked on the door. It opened after a long pause. Sana stood there, pale, startled, as if she hadn't expected anyone to ever find her. Amy, her voice trembled. Can I come in? I said softly. Inside, the apartment was spotless, unnaturally so, everything too neat, too arranged. It didn't feel lived in. It felt managed. We sat. She made tea, hands trembling slightly as she poured. How are you, Beta? I'm fine, she said quickly. I reached across the table, touched her hand. You don't sound fine. Tears welled up instantly in her eyes. She looked away, biting her lip, shaking her head. Amy, please don't ask. It'll make things worse. Worse? How could it be worse than seeing you like this? I whispered. Before she could answer, the door clicked open. Adil walked in. He smiled politely at me, but his eyes, those same unreadable eyes, flicked between me and Sana. Auntie, you should have called. You know Sana gets emotional when you come without notice. His tone was smooth, but the meaning was. I could feel the tension in the air tighten like a noose. I smiled tightly. I was just missing my daughter. He nodded, sitting across from me. She's fine here, aren't you, Sana? She nodded quickly. Yes, I am. I watched the way her hands trembled, the way she avoided looking at him. I wanted to grab her, take her home that very moment, but I couldn't. His charm, his control, it was suffocating but invisible. When I left that evening, she walked me to the gate. Her eyes glistened in the fading light. Amy, she whispered, please don't come like this again. He doesn't like it. I asked quietly, what about what you like? She didn't answer. She just hugged me tightly, her body shaking. That night, I sat by the window, unable to sleep. Imran noticed my red eyes at breakfast. You went to her house, didn't you? He asked. I didn't reply. He sighed, frustrated. Shazia, you'll only make it harder for her. Adil is her husband now. You can't fight her battles forever. I looked at him, my voice breaking. Then what's a mother for, Imran? To just watch her child suffer quietly. He didn't respond. He just picked up his cup and walked away. That was the first time I realized how lonely it feels to be a mother whose instincts no one believes. Sometimes I still think about those early days, the laughter, the wedding, the photos framed on the wall. I walk past them now, each smile frozen in time, unaware of the storm that was coming. If I could go back, I would have listened to my gut. I would have stopped the wedding, stopped the lies, stopped her from walking into that house that became her cage. But life doesn't give you warnings you understand. It whispers. And if you ignore the whispers long enough, they turn into screams. And that scream came the night she stood before me, trembling, broken, and said those words that shattered me forever. Amy, I went to the police to report my husband, but they believed him instead. After that night, those words lived inside me like a wound that refused to close. But before they were ever spoken, there were months of silence. Slow, creeping cracks beneath what looked like a perfect life. People always say you can tell when your child is hiding something. Maybe that's true, but what they never tell you is how helpless it feels when you know something is wrong and you can't reach her, no matter how hard you try. It started with her voice. Sana's voice had always been full of warmth. When she used to call, it would light up the house. Ami, guess what I cooked today? Or Abu, remember that book you told me about? But now, every call felt rehearsed, mechanical, as if she were reading from a script someone had forced her to memorize. How are you, Beta? I ask. I'm fine, Ami, she'd say. Adil's fine too. That's all, no laughter, no stories, no warmth, just fine. And fine, I learned, is a word women use when they're falling apart. I started calling more often, just to hear her voice. Sometimes she'd pick up, sometimes she wouldn't. When she did, she'd whisper, Ami, I'll call you later, he's home. He doesn't let you talk to me, I asked once, my heart pounding. It's not that, she said quickly. He just doesn't like when I get distracted. He says it's disrespectful to talk on the phone when he's here. Disrespectful? I almost laughed, but it came out more like a choked breath. Beta, talking to your mother isn't disrespect. She stayed quiet for a moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, You don't understand, Ami. He's just very particular. That word again, particular. It hid more than it revealed. One afternoon, I decided to visit again, even though Imran told me not to. Shazia, he warned, you're only going to create drama. Sana's adjusting. Let her breathe. Adjusting? I snapped. You make it sound like she's a machine learning a new setting. She's our daughter. He sighed. She's also someone's wife now. And that was the sentence that broke something in me, because it meant my daughter's pain had an expiration date, the day she got married. After that, it was no longer ours to acknowledge. Still, I went. When I reached, it was evening. The house was dimly lit, curtains drawn tight. Sana opened the door, her face pale under the flickering light. Ami, she whispered, glancing over her shoulder, you shouldn't have come. Why not? I'm your mother. Before she could answer, Adil's voice echoed from inside. Who's there? Sana flinched. I saw it, the tiny tremor in her body. She turned and said softly, It's Ami. Adil appeared in the hallway, his smile sharp and practiced. Auntie, what a surprise. His voice was smooth, charming, but his eyes cold. Watching, measuring. I was nearby, I lied. Thought I'd stop by for tea. Of course, he gestured politely. Come in. The air felt heavy, as if even the walls were afraid to breathe. Sana served tea, her hands shaking just slightly. I noticed the faint bruise near her wrist again, darker this time. Are you okay? I asked quietly when he stepped out to take a phone call. She nodded quickly. Please don't say anything, Ami, please. What's happening? Her eyes filled instantly. She looked toward the hallway, her voice trembling. He just gets angry sometimes, but he's sorry afterward. He says I make him angry. I shouldn't answer back. Answer back? Sana, you're not a child. Ami, please. Her whisper turned desperate. If he knows I told you, he'll get worse. My hands went cold. I wanted to grab her, take her away, never let him touch her again. But footsteps echoed back into the room, and she quickly wiped her eyes, forcing a smile. Adil returned, his expression calm, his tone pleasant. So Auntie, how? Imran uncle. I smiled tightly. He's fine, he worries about her. Adil's lips curved faintly. You don't have to, she's in good hands. The way he said it made my skin crawl. That night when I came home, I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, my hands shaking. Imran came in, loosened his tie, and sighed when he saw me. You went again. She's not okay, Imran. He sat beside me. You're seeing ghosts, Shazia, you're overreacting. I turned to him, tears burning my eyes. She's our daughter, there are bruises on her arms. His expression hardened. Then tell her to be smarter, you know how temperamental men can be. I stared at him, disbelief turning to fury. Temperamental, you make it sound normal. He didn't meet my eyes. It is normal, Shazia. People fight, women cry, then things go back to normal. Don't destroy her marriage over small issues. Small issues. That's what he called it. That's how easily the world hides cruelty, by giving it smaller names. Weeks passed. Sana stopped calling altogether. When I did reach her, she'd answer briefly, then hang up. I started to feel like I was losing her, bit by bit, breath by breath. One night, I dreamt she was calling out for me, her voice echoing through the house. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. I couldn't bear it anymore. I went to her house the next morning. The door was unlocked. Inside, the living room was a mess: broken vase, overturned chair, a smashed photo frame on the floor. "Sana," I called out, panic rising in my chest. She came out from the bedroom, her face swollen, lip cut, eyes red from crying. My world stopped. "What happened to you?" I rushed forward, holding her face, my hands trembling. "Nothing," she whispered. "I fell." "Don't lie to me." She broke then. Her body collapsed into mine, sobbing, shaking. "Amy, he gets angry. He says I don't respect him, that I embarrass him. He says I talk too much, that I look at people the wrong way. I try, Amy, I try so hard to make him happy." I held her, tears streaming down my face. "Then come home, come with me right now." She shook her head frantically. "No, he'll come after me. You don't understand. He always finds me. Then we'll go to the police." Her voice turned into a whisper soaked in fear. "They won't believe me." I didn't know it then, but she was right. That night, Imran came home and saw her in our living room. His face hardened instantly. "Why is she here?" "She needed to be safe," I said. "Sana," he said firmly, "marriage isn't easy. You can't run to your mother every time you argue." Sana's eyes filled with tears. "Abu, he hit me." Imran froze, then looked away. "You must have provoked him. No man raises his hand for no reason." My voice broke. "Imran." But Sana just went silent. That silence, the one where you realize even your father won't fight for you, was the moment I saw something inside her break. She stayed the night, crying quietly in her old room. I sat beside her, brushing her hair like I used to when she was little. "Amy," she whispered in the dark, "why does love hurt like this?" I didn't have an answer. The next morning, she packed her bag. "Where are you going?" I asked, panic rising. "Back," she said softly. "If I don't, he'll come here. I'll make it work. I just need to be better." "Better? He's the one who's wrong." "Amy, please," her voice broke. "He says I embarrass him. Maybe if I stop talking so much, if I stay quiet, things will change." I grabbed her hand. "You'll die trying to please a man who doesn't deserve you." She smiled faintly through her tears. "Then at least I'll die trying, Amy." She left before Imran woke up. The sound of the door closing was like a scream muffled by the morning air. For days, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept calling her, but she wouldn't answer. When she finally did, her voice was hollow. "Amy, I'm okay. He's been calm lately." But I could hear it, the fear underneath her words. The kind of fear that doesn't go away even when the monster smiles. Imran told me to stop calling. "You're only making her anxious," he said. But how could I not? I was her mother. Mothers don't stop worrying. They just learn to live with the ache. One evening, a neighbor called me. "Shazia Baji," she said hesitantly, "I saw your daughter outside yesterday. She looked not well." Adil was shouting. People gathered. Then he pulled her inside. My hands went cold. Where was this? She gave me the address. I hung up and left without even telling Imran. When I reached, it was dark. I could hear raised voices inside. I pressed my ear to the door. "You humiliate me," Adil shouted. "You make me look like a fool in front of everyone." "I didn't do anything," Sana cried. "I was just talking to the grocer." "Liar." The sound of a slap echoed. I froze. My entire body shook. I wanted to break the door down, but my hands wouldn't move. I was too afraid, too shocked. I stood there, tears streaming down my face, listening to my daughter being broken inside her own home. When the noise stopped, I finally knocked. He opened the door, eyes cold, jaw clenched. "Oh, Auntie," he said calmly, as if nothing had happened. "What brings you here so late?" "I want to see my daughter," I managed to say. "She's resting," he said. "Had a little argument, she's fine now." His tone was ice. I looked past him. Sana was sitting on the floor, holding her cheek. "I'm taking her home," I said. He smiled thinly. "She's my wife. You can't just take her whenever you like." The audacity in his voice made me tremble with rage, But Sana shook her head slightly, tears running down her face, silently pleading, "Don't make it worse." So I left. But a mother never really leaves. I sat in the car, outside her building that night, until the lights went out. That's when I realized, sometimes the worst prison isn't the walls, it's the fear that lives inside them. If only I had known that fear would one day drive her to the police station. Only to find that justice, too, wears a blindfold that favors the powerful. But that came later. For now, all I could do was watch the cracks widen, helpless, praying she'd find her way out before everything collapsed. It was raining the night she came back. I remember because the sound of the rain was the only thing louder than her sobs. I opened the door and froze. My daughter stood there, drenched, trembling, holding her little girl in her arms like she was clinging to the last piece of her world. Her hair was soaked, her clothes torn at the sleeve, and her face, I can still see it. A strange mix of fear and exhaustion, but her eyes, those once bright, hopeful eyes, looked empty. "Amy," she whispered, her voice cracking, "please don't send me back." My heart dropped. I pulled her in immediately, wrapping her and the baby in a shawl. "Sana, SHH, you're safe here. No one's sending you anywhere." She collapsed into my arms, crying like a child. Her body shook violently. The baby, my granddaughter, whimpered softly, confused by her mother's tears. I held them both close, my heart pounding, my hands trembling as I whispered, "You're home now, Beta, you're home." When Imran came out of the room and saw them, his expression changed. It wasn't surprise, it was frustration, the kind that hides behind silence. "What happened?" he asked, his voice low, heavy. "She's not going back," I said before Sana could speak. He looked at me, then at her. "Sana, what happened this time?" "This time," I repeated, my voice breaking. "Do you hear yourself, Imran?" He ignored me. "Sana, talk to me. Did he hit you again?" Sana shook her head slowly. "No, Abu, not this time." Her voice was small. He said things that made me feel like I don't exist." Imran sighed. "You're overthinking again. Men say things in anger. That doesn't mean." I cut him off. "Enough, she's your daughter, not some stranger. Stop pretending this is normal." He looked at me for a long time, and then walked away. That night, I sat beside Sana as she fed her baby. The rain kept falling, soft and steady, like the world was mourning with us. "Amy," she said quietly, "do you think people can change?" I hesitated. Sometimes they do, sometimes they just learn how to hide better. She smiled weakly. "I used to believe in him, you know? I thought love could fix everything." Her voice broke, and she pressed her lips together to stop herself from crying again. "He doesn't just hurt me with words or hands, Amy. He hurts me with silence, with control. I can't even breathe without wondering if it'll upset him." I reached out and took her hand. "Then don't go back, stay here." "I can't," she whispered. "He'll come here, he'll make a scene. Abu will be humiliated, everyone will talk." Her words stabbed at me. So what if they talk? Let them choke on their gossip while my daughter lives in peace. But she only smiled sadly. "Peace doesn't exist for women like me, Amy. Not in his house, not out here. People only see what he shows them." Days passed, and for a while it felt like time stopped. I would wake up in the morning to the sound of her daughter, little Isha, laughing softly in the living room. Sana would sit beside her, trying to smile, but her eyes gave away her pain. One afternoon, as I watched them play, I asked, "What will you do now?" She looked up. "I'll try one last time." "Try what?" "To make it work." I stared at her. "You're not serious." "I am," she said quietly. "I have to, for Aisha, for Abu, for myself." "For yourself," I said bitterly. "You've lost yourself, Sana." Her eyes filled. "Maybe, but I need to find her again, even if it's through pain." When Imran came home that evening, she told him she was going back. He looked relieved, almost proud. "That's my girl," he said. "Marriage takes patience." I wanted to scream. "Patience, she's bleeding inside Imran." But he just gave me a look, the kind that told me this conversation was over. Sana packed her things quietly. Before she left, she hugged me for a long time. "If anything happens, you'll take care of Aisha, right?" she whispered. I frowned. "What are you saying, Sana? Nothing's going to happen." She smiled faintly, kissed Aisha's forehead, and said softly, "Just promise me." "I promise," I said, not knowing those words would later haunt me. After that, she stopped visiting altogether. Weeks turned into months. Each day without a call was like a piece of my heart breaking off and disappearing. I prayed every night, whispered her name in every dua, begged God to protect her. Then one evening, the phone rang. Amy, her voice trembled, barely audible. Sana, what's wrong? They came for him. Who? The police. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? I did it, she said. I went to the police. I told them everything. I froze. You went alone. Yes, she whispered. I couldn't take it anymore, Amy. The shouting, the hitting, the threats. He said if I ever left again, he'd take Aisha away forever. I was so scared. I thought if I went to the police, they'd help me. I held the phone tighter. What did they say? There was a pause, then her voice cracked. They didn't believe me. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. He told them I'm unstable, she said. He smiled, Amy. He smiled while I cried. He said I get emotional and make up stories. They looked at me like I was crazy. One officer even said, "Ma'am, it's a domestic issue. Go home and sort it out." She was sobbing now, gasping for breath. They believed him, Amy. They believed him instead of me. I felt my knees give out. The phone slipped from my hand. That was the night my world changed. I went to her the next morning. The house looked the same, perfect, polished, suffocating. Sana sat on the sofa, staring at the wall, her hands clenched. Adil stood nearby, calm as ever, sipping tea like nothing had happened. I stormed in. "You monster," I shouted. "You made her go to the police." He turned to me, smiling faintly. "Auntie, please, don't shout, you'll scare the child." "You scared her long before I came," I spat. "You think your lies can hide what you've done." He set his cup down slowly, eyes narrowing. "Careful, Auntie, accusations have consequences." Before I could answer, Sana stood up suddenly. "Amy, please, just go home." Her voice was desperate, pleading. "What? No, I'm not leaving you here." "Please," she whispered, "if you stay, he'll." She stopped herself. I saw the fear flicker in her eyes. I looked at Adil, that calm, empty smile, and something in me snapped. "You can lie to everyone, but God sees everything. One day, he'll take away the peace you stole from her." He smirked. "God helps those who stay quiet, Auntie." Then he turned and walked away, like he owned the world. I stayed that night in the car outside their house, unable to drive away. The rain started again, pouring against the windshield like tears. Through the curtains, I could see faint shadows moving, Sana's silhouette packing back and forth, Adil's figure standing close. I wanted to run in, but I knew I couldn't save her by force. She had to find her way out herself. When I finally returned home, Imran was waiting. "You went again," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. He looked tired, defeated. "You're fighting a battle she doesn't want to fight." I stared at him. "No, Imran, she does want to fight. She's just too broken to believe she can win." He didn't respond. He just turned away, muttering, "We raised her to be strong, not rebellious." I wanted to scream, but instead I sat on the floor, clutching a photo of her wedding day, her smile bright, her eyes alive. That girl was gone now. And all I could think was, I should have stopped it before it began. A few days later, Sana came home again, this time quietly. No rain, no screams, just silence. She looked hollow. Her face was expressionless, her voice monotone. "Amy," she said softly, "they told me to apologize, to end the matter." "What matter? The one where he beats you, the one where he lies." She looked down. "They said I was exaggerating, that I'm ruining his reputation." My heart ached. "And what about you, Sana? What about your life?" She smiled faintly. "Mine's already ruined." That night, I held her hand as she slept beside Isha. Her fingers were cold, her breathing shallow. I wanted to protect her, but I was losing her piece by piece. At dawn, she woke up suddenly, tears streaming down her face. "Amy," she whispered, "I can't do this anymore." I cupped her face. "Then don't stay here, we'll start over." But she shook her head. "It's too late." "Why would you say that?" She looked at me, eyes empty. "Because when a woman's truth is ignored, she stops existing. I went to the police, Amy. I screamed for help, and they told me to be patient. What's left now?" I hugged her, sobbing, praying that somehow God would send us a miracle. But in my heart, I knew. This was only the beginning of the end. The night she came to me with those words, they believed him instead, was the night my heart finally understood what helplessness truly meant. She sat on the edge of her old bed, her fingers clenched, her voice shaking. The silence between us was unbearable. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows like it, too, wanted to scream for her. "I told them everything," she whispered. "Every slap, every insult, every night he locked me out on the balcony. I showed them the messages where he threatened me, but they looked at me like I was the crazy one." She paused, took a trembling breath. He sat there, calm and polite. He told them I'm emotionally unstable, that I make up stories, that he's been patient with me. Her voice cracked. "They said, 'Madam, maybe you should try counseling.' Counseling, Amy, for me, not for him." I sat beside her, my throat tight, my eyes stinging. "You did the right thing, Beta. You did everything you could." She shook her head. "No, I shouldn't have gone alone. I thought truth was enough." Her words felt like knives, sharp, real, hopeless. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back as if ashamed. "Do you know what hurts the most?" she asked quietly. "The way he smiled at me when they told me to go home. That smile, it said, 'I told you no one would believe you.'" Her voice broke into sobs. "He was right, Amy, he was right." The next day, Adil came to our house. He didn't call first. He just walked in, bold, confident, as if he owned the air we breathed. Imran was in the living room. I was standing by the door when Adil stepped inside, his shirt crisp, his expression perfectly composed. "Assalamu alaikum, uncle," he said, voice smooth. "I thought I should come and clear a few misunderstandings." Imran looked up slowly, coldly. "What misunderstandings?" Adil sighed, practiced, dramatic. "Sana is fragile. She overthinks. I've been trying to help her, but she refuses to see reason. Yesterday, she went to the police. They told her to rest, and now she's here." I could feel the rage boiling in my chest. "Don't you dare call her fragile. You broke her." He turned to me, his expression perfectly polite. "Auntie, please, I know you're emotional, but marriage is between two people. Outsiders can't fix what's inside." "Outsiders," I spat. "I gave birth to her." Imran raised his voice. "Enough, Shazia." I looked at him in disbelief. "You're defending him." "I'm asking you to stop shouting," he said firmly. Then, turning to Adil, he asked, "Is it true you didn't hurt her?" Adil looked down, sighing softly, the perfect image of a misunderstood husband. "I love Sana, uncle. I've never raised a hand to her without reason." "Without reason," I screamed. "You just admitted." "Shazia," Imran's tone was sharp, final. Adil stood there calm, watching me unravel. Then he smiled faintly and said, "If she needs time, I'll give it, but please tell her I'll always be waiting. She's my wife." He turned and left, just like that, as if he'd walked in to sign off on his own innocence. When the door shut, I turned to Imran, shaking. "Did you not see his arrogance, his manipulation?" Imran rubbed his temples. "He seemed genuine, Shazia. Maybe Sana misunderstood." I slapped the table so hard the teacup rattled. "Misunderstood? Are you listening to yourself? She went to the police. She begged for help." "She's under stress," he said quietly. "We can't ruin a man's life over emotions." That was when I realized men believe other men more than their own daughters. That night, Sana stayed silent. She sat by the window, her face turned toward the dark sky. When I brought her food, she didn't eat. She just whispered, "They all believe him, Ami, even Abu." I sat beside her, brushing her hair gently. "Don't think about them, Beta. We'll find a way. I'll go to the police with you this time." She turned to me, eyes hollow. "Why? So they can laugh at me again? So he can win again?" Her voice trembled. "You don't know how it feels when people look at your bruises and still doubt you. When they say, 'Maybe you made him angry.'" I had no words, only tears. Over the next few days, the house changed. Imran avoided her. He'd leave early, come home late, pretending to be busy. At night, he'd tell me, "She needs to move on. If she keeps talking about it, people will find out." "Let them find out," I snapped. "Let them see the truth." He shook his head. "You don't understand, Shazia. A woman's reputation is delicate. Once ruined, it never recovers." "And a man," I demanded. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes, not anger, but fear. Fear of shame, fear of whispers, fear of what people might think. So that's what mattered more to him, society, not his daughter's pain. A week later, Sana received a letter. It was from Adil. She opened it quietly, her hands shaking. I watched as she read, her eyes moving slowly over each word. When she was done, she folded it carefully and handed it to me. It said, "Sana, you embarrassed me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I forgave you because I love you. But if you don't come home soon, I'll make sure you never see your daughter again." That single sentence, "I'll make sure you never see your daughter again," drained the color from her face. "Ami," she whispered, "he'll take Aisha." "He can't," I said quickly, though my voice trembled. "He won't." But we both knew, men like Adil didn't make empty threats. That night, she packed a small bag. "Sana, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. She just looked at Aisha, sleeping peacefully, and whispered, "I can't let him take her. I'll go back for her sake." "No, no, you can't. You'll die in that house." She smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then at least she'll have a father. The world doesn't pity fatherless children, Ami, only fatherless mothers." I grabbed her shoulders, shaking. "You think suffering is love? You think dying quietly is strength?" Her lips quivered. "Maybe it's not strength, maybe it's surrender, but it's all I have left." Before I could stop her, she walked to Imran's room, kissed his hand, and said softly, "Abu, forgive me." He looked confused. For what? For being a disappointment. Then she left. And just like that, the house became a tomb again, silent, empty, waiting for another storm. Days turned into weeks, no calls, no visits. I tried calling her number, it was switched off. I went to her house, no one answered. The neighbors said Adil had gone on a business trip. A mother knows when something is wrong. The night stretched into endless hours of waiting, praying, trembling every time the phone rang. Imran told me to stop. She'll come when she's ready. But I couldn't sit still. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd walk the corridor at night, clutching her childhood photo, whispering her name under my breath. Then one morning, I heard a knock. When I opened the door, she was standing there. But she wasn't the same. Her face was pale, lips cracked, eyes swollen. She looked empty, like something inside her had died. Without a word, she walked in, sat down on the sofa, and said, "It's over." I knelt beside her. "What happened?" She looked at me with a hollow smile. "I told him I'm done. I told him I want a divorce." I froze, and her voice broke. He laughed. Then she whispered, almost to herself. He said, "You can leave whenever you want, but you'll never take Aisha. She belongs to me now." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she clutched her hands together. I begged him, Ami. I said, "Take everything, the house, the jewelry, the clothes, just let me have my daughter." He said no. I felt my heart shatter. "We'll go to court, Beta, we'll fight." She shook her head. "He has power, connections, money, he'll win." Then she looked at me, truly looked, and said something that chilled me to the bone. "Ami, I don't think I can survive this anymore." Her words echoed in my ears long after she went to her room. I sat there, staring at the floor, praying harder than I ever had in my life. But prayers sometimes come too late. That night, she stayed awake. I could hear her moving around, soft footsteps, the creak of the cupboard, the sound of papers rustling. When I went to check on her, she was sitting at her desk, writing something. Her face was calm, too calm. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sana, what are you doing?" She smiled faintly. "Just putting my thoughts down, it helps." I didn't know she was writing her final letter. The next morning, she was gone. Her bed was neatly made, her phone left behind. On the table lay a small envelope with my name. I tore it open, hands trembling. Inside were only a few words, words that burned through my soul. "Tell them I tried, Ami." And beside it, her wedding photo torn in half. That was the last thing she left behind, before walking into a world that refused to listen. The morning after she disappeared was eerily quiet. No birds, no wind, no sound except the ticking clock on the wall, steady, merciless, indifferent. Her room was still the way she left it. The bedsheet smooth, the curtain half open, the faint scent of her jasmine perfume lingering in the air. I stood at the doorway, unable to move. My hands trembled as I clutched her letter, those 4 words echoing in my head again and again. "Tell them I tried." I didn't know what to do first. Call the police, call Adil, call the world, and scream that my daughter was gone. But when I looked at Imran, I saw nothing but silence. He sat on the edge of the bed, his face pale, eyes unfocused. "She'll come back," he whispered, more to himself than to me. "She just needed space." "Imran," I said, my voice shaking, "she's not coming back. You know she's not." "Don't say that," he snapped suddenly, his voice breaking. "She's our daughter. She'll be fine. She's just angry." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to that lie, but the ache in my chest told me otherwise. Hours turned into a day. A day turned into 3. We went to the police, filed a report. The officer yawned halfway through writing it. "Madam, maybe she went to a relative's house. These domestic issues happen all the time." I wanted to scream at him, "My daughter isn't a domestic issue. She's missing." But Imran stopped me. He placed a hand on my arm, whispered, "Don't make a scene. They'll only take us less seriously." Less seriously, as if her pain wasn't already invisible enough. We went home empty-handed. The house felt heavier, emptier, haunted. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every shadow outside the window looked like her. Every sound made me hope. But she never walked through that door again. Adil came 2 days later. He stood at our doorstep, with fake concern written all over his face. "I heard she's missing," he said, shaking his head. "Auntie, uncle, I'm so sorry. I don't know where she could have gone." I glared at him. "You liar, you did this." He looked wounded, a perfect actor. "Please, Auntie, don't say that. I loved her. She was my wife. I've been calling her too." Imran interrupted before I could speak. "Did you fight before she left?" Adil sighed, lowering his eyes. "She was upset. She said she needed time. I didn't stop her. Maybe I should have." That was the moment I realized. He had crafted his alibi perfectly. The same calm, composed man the police had believed over my daughter. When he left, I broke down. "He's lying, Imran. I know it. I can feel it." Imran didn't respond. He just sat there, staring at the wall, his face blank. That silence hurt more than any word could. Days became weeks. The police found nothing. No leads, no sign, no witness. I stopped cooking. I stopped sleeping. I spent hours in her room, sitting beside Aisha's empty crib, clutching Sana's old dupatta to my chest, inhaling whatever faint memory remained of her. Every night I prayed, not even for her to come home anymore, just to know what happened. Then one morning, there was a knock on the door. 2 officers stood outside. The older one spoke softly. "We found a body near the river." The world went silent. I remember my knees giving out, Imran shouting my name, the room spinning, and then nothing. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor, my face wet with tears. The world outside felt unreal, muted, far away. Imran sat beside me, his face ashen, eyes red. "It's her," he said quietly. "No," I whispered. "No, it's not. She promised she'd come back, she." He shook his head. "They found her scarf, her ring." My scream echoed through the house, bouncing off every wall, every memory. I don't even remember falling to the ground again. I only remember the sound, that sound no mother should ever make. A sound ripped from somewhere too deep to heal. The funeral was quiet, too quiet. No one talked. No one looked at me. People whispered behind their hands, words like "poor girl" and "troubled marriage" floating in the air like poison. Adil stood at a distance, wearing a white kurta, eyes lowered, playing the role of the grieving husband. I wanted to tear that mask off his face. I wanted to scream her truth into the world. But Imran stood still beside me, his jaw tight, his eyes hollow. After everyone left, I looked at him and whispered, "Say it." He turned to me. "Say what?" "Say that you were wrong." His lips trembled, but he said nothing. "Say that you let her die in silence because you were too afraid of what people would say." He looked at the ground. "I didn't know." "You chose not to know," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "Every bruise, every cry, you called it adjustment. Every scream, you called it marriage. You killed her too, Imran, we both did." He flinched like the words were bullets. "I loved her," he whispered. "Then why didn't you believe her?" He didn't answer, he couldn't. That was the night he moved into the guest room. We never spoke properly again after that. Weeks passed. The house became a graveyard of memories. I would wake up to the sound of Aisha crying in her crib, her tiny hands reaching for a mother who would never return. I'd pick her up, press her against my chest, whisper, "It's okay, Mary John, Daddy's here." But every time she called me Amy by mistake, my heart shattered all over again. Adil came one day, saying he wanted custody of Aisha. Over my dead body. I met him at the door, my hands trembling, voice shaking but firm. "You took my daughter from me, you won't take her child too." He smirked. "Legally, she's mine." I stepped closer, my voice cold. "Legally, maybe, but not morally. And if you ever come near her again, I'll make sure the whole city knows who you really are." For the first time, his mask cracked, his eyes darkened. "Careful, Auntie, you've already lost one daughter, don't lose your mind next." He left, but I knew that wasn't the end. Men like him never end things cleanly, they linger like shadows, feeding off your fear. Imran started drinking after that. The man who once preached strength and pride now sat on the balcony at night, whispering Sana's name under his breath. Once I found him staring at her photo, tears running down his face. "I told her to go back," he murmured. "I told her it was her duty." "She only wanted to be believed," I said softly. He nodded slowly, his voice breaking, "And I failed her." It was the first time he admitted it, but it was too late. We both had blood on our hands, the quiet kind, the kind that never washes off. I started visiting her grave every evening, a small, lonely corner in the cemetery, surrounded by silence and dry leaves. I'd sit there for hours, talking to her like she was still listening. "I saw Adil today," I'd whisper. "He looked proud like he won, but you didn't lose, Beta, you were brave, you spoke when no one else would." The wind would blow softly through the trees, and for a second, it always felt like she was answering. Sometimes I'd bring Aisha with me. She'd sit beside me, holding flowers in her little hands. "Daddy," she'd ask innocently, "why is Amy sleeping here?" I'd swallow the lump in my throat and say, "Because she's with Allah now, Mary John. She's happy there." "Will she wake up?" I smiled through tears. "In heaven, she already has." She smile and place the flowers gently on the grave. "Then these are for her." Those moments kept me alive. But society wasn't done with us. Neighbors started whispering again. "Poor Sana, she was too emotional. She should have been more patient." Maybe if her mother hadn't interfered. Each word was a dagger, but I stopped defending myself. I let them talk. Because their gossip couldn't hurt me anymore, I had already lost everything that mattered. What they didn't understand was that silence kills too. It strangles slowly, until one day you can't scream even when you want to. That's what happened to my daughter. She screamed until her voice became silence. At night, I'd sit by Aisha's crib, watching her sleep. The moonlight would fall on her tiny face, so peaceful, so unaware of the world's cruelty. I'd whisper, "I'll protect you, my love. I'll raise you to never be afraid of speaking. You'll never live in silence like your mother did." But deep down, I knew the truth: the war never ends. It just changes shape. Because the real battle isn't with the world. It's with ourselves, the guilt, the regret, the questions that never stop echoing. What if I had acted sooner? What if I had believed louder? Sometimes, I still hear her voice in my dreams. "Amy," she whispers, "I tried." And I answer, "I know, Beta, you did." Then she fades, leaving me in the dark with my tears. But even in the darkness, I promise her, her story will not die. Not while I'm still breathing. There are some moments that divide your life into before and after. Before, when you still had hope. After, when hope becomes a ghost that follows you everywhere. For me, that moment was when they brought my daughter home, wrapped in white. The police called early that morning. The sun hadn't even risen yet. I remember the ring, long, sharp, cruel. I picked up the phone, praying for good news, though some part of me already knew it was too late. "Madam," the officer said gently, "we found her near the old bridge by the river." My heart stopped. He kept talking, something about identification, paperwork, procedure, but I didn't hear a word. The world blurred. My hands went cold. The phone slipped from my grasp and hit the floor with a dull thud. Imran rushed in. "Shazia, what happened?" I couldn't speak. My lips moved, but no sound came. I just looked at him, and in that silence he knew. He collapsed into the chair, covering his face. "No, no, please no." But it was true. When I saw her, I didn't recognize her at first. She looked peaceful, too peaceful, as if she had finally found the quiet she had been searching for. Her face was pale, her lips slightly parted, her hair clinging softly to her cheeks. I remember touching her hand, cold, stiff, lifeless, and whispering, "Wake up, Beta. It's me, Amy, you're safe now." But she didn't wake up. She had drowned. The police said it looked like suicide. She left a note, one of them said casually, as if that made it easier to understand. I took the letter from his hand. The paper was damp, the ink slightly smudged, but her handwriting, that delicate, familiar handwriting, was clear. I tried, but no one listened. Tell Aisha I love her. Tell Abu I forgive him. Tell Amy I'm sorry. The words blurred as my tears fell onto the page. Imran took the letter and read it in silence. His face twisted, not in anger, not in denial, but in something worse, realization. The kind that comes too late. "She forgave me," he whispered. "She still forgave me." I looked at him through my tears. Yes, because that's who she was. Even after everything, she still loved us. He broke down then, truly broke. The man who never cried, who always told me to be strong, fell to his knees and sobbed like a child. "I killed her," he kept repeating. "I killed my own daughter." I wanted to tell him he wasn't alone in his guilt, that I was just as guilty. But the words wouldn't come, because no amount of truth could undo what we had done in silence. The days that followed felt unreal. People came and went, neighbors, relatives, strangers, offering condolences that felt hollow, rehearsed. "Allah give you patience," they said. "She's in a better place. God tests those he loves." I wanted to scream. Why does he test women through pain and men through power? Adil came too. He arrived late, wearing a white kurta, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He cried crocodile tears, rehearsed sobs. He even tried to touch her shroud. I stepped between them. "Don't you dare," I hissed. "You don't get to touch her. You killed her long before that river did." He looked around nervously, pretending to stay calm. "Auntie, please, don't say such things. People are watching." "I want them to watch," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "I want them to see the face of the man who broke her." Imran grabbed my arm, whispering, "Not here, Shazia, not now." I turned to him, my tears burning. "If not now, then when? When will the truth matter?" But I stopped fighting. I couldn't fight anymore. I had no strength left, only sorrow. Adil stayed for exactly 20 minutes. Then he left, leaving behind his fake condolences and a lifetime of damage. After the burial, I couldn't go home. The idea of walking into that house without her laughter, her voice, her presence, felt unbearable. But I went anyway. When I opened the door, the first thing I saw was Aisha's tiny shoes near the mat. I picked them up, pressed them to my chest, and broke down again. Aisha was too young to understand what had happened. She kept asking, "Where, Amy? When will she wake up?" I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain death to a child when you can't even accept it yourself? So I lied. "She's sleeping, Mary John. She's with Allah." She nodded innocently. "Then we'll see her again, right?" I smiled through my tears. "Yes, Beta, one day." Imran and I became strangers after that. We lived in the same house, but there were no words left between us. Only guilt, only silence. He would sit alone in the living room, staring at her photos for hours. I would hear him whisper sometimes, apologies that came too late. Once I found him in the garden at dawn, on his knees, his face buried in his hands. "She came to me," he said when he saw me. "In my dream, she said she forgave me, but her eyes," his voice broke. "Her eyes looked disappointed." I wanted to comfort him, but I couldn't. I was too busy fighting my own demons. The investigation ended quickly. "No signs of foul play," they said. "Case closed." I wanted to scream that her silence was the crime scene, that our indifference was the weapon, but the world moved on. That's the thing about tragedy, it shakes your world, but to everyone else, it's just another story that fades by next week. People stopped visiting, the whispers stopped too. But the silence they left behind was louder than anything I'd ever heard. One afternoon, I went into her room for the first time since she died. The curtains were drawn, dust covered everything. I opened the window, letting sunlight in, and for a moment, I could almost see her sitting at the desk, writing in her diary, humming softly. Her diary. I found it inside the drawer, beneath a stack of folded clothes. My hands trembled as I opened it. Her handwriting, neat, graceful, filled every page. He said I talk too much. He doesn't like when I smile at other people. I'm scared of what happens when the door closes. Maybe it's my fault. Page after page of pain, quiet, buried, suffocating pain. Then near the end, one line stood out. If something happens to me, don't believe the silence. Silence lies. I closed the diary and held it to my chest, sobbing. She had been leaving signs all along, and we had missed every single one. Months passed. Time didn't heal anything. It just blurred the edges of pain enough for people to pretend we were okay. But I never would be. Every corner of that house reminded me of her. The chair she used to sit on, the mirror where she used to braid her hair, the faint scent of her perfume that lingered in her closet. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I heard her voice calling, Amy. I'd rush to her room, but it was always empty. I began visiting her grave every day. It became the only place where I could breathe. I'd sit for hours, talking to her, reading her diary out loud, as if the wind could carry my words to wherever she was. One day, I took Isha with me. She held my hand tightly, her little fingers warm in mine. When we reached, she placed her favorite doll on the grave and said softly, Amy used to braid my hair. Can you do it now, Daddy? I smiled through tears. Of course, Mary John. As I braided her hair, she looked up at me and asked, why did Amy go away? I froze. The words caught in my throat. I wanted to tell her the truth, that her mother was killed by cruelty disguised as love, by silence disguised as patience, by a world that punishes women for speaking. But all I said was, because she was too good for this world, Beta. She smiled, satisfied with the answer only a child could believe, and hugged me tightly. In that moment, I realized something. Sana wasn't really gone. She lived through this little girl's laughter, through her kindness, through her questions. Aisha was my second chance to love without fear. That night, as I tucked Aisha into bed, she held my hand and whispered, will Amy be proud of me? I kissed her forehead, more than you'll ever know. She smiled and drifted off to sleep. I watched her for a long time, listening to her soft breaths, thinking about the promise I had made to protect her, to teach her that silence is never strength. I went to the window and looked up at the sky. The moon was bright, surrounded by clouds. I whispered, she's safe, Sana, I'll keep her safe. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Not healing, that would never come, but peace. Because I finally understood. Love doesn't end with death. It lingers in the way we remember, in the way we fight, in the way we choose to live differently. That night, before I went to sleep, I opened her diary one last time. On the very last page, she had written something I hadn't seen before. If anyone ever reads this, don't cry for me. Just promise me you'll believe the next girl who speaks. I closed the book, tears streaming down my face, and whispered, I promise, Beta, I promise. It's been 5 years. 5 long years since that morning when they brought her home, wrapped in white. 5 years since her laughter disappeared from the walls of this house. And yet, every night, I still hear her voice. Soft, distant, calling me in dreams. Amy. I wake up, my chest aching, my throat tight, but the room is always empty. Only silence answers back. Our house is quieter now. Imran and I have learned to live like two shadows under the same roof, moving around each other, never really meeting. He doesn't talk much anymore. Sometimes I find him sitting in the courtyard, staring at the sky for hours. Once, I heard him whispering, if only I had believed her once, just once. I wanted to tell him that I whisper the same words every day, but we don't say such things out loud anymore. The weight of guilt is something we each carry alone. And maybe that's our punishment, to live long enough to understand the pain we once ignored. Aisha is 6 now. She has her mother's eyes, soft, brown, full of emotion, the same eyes that once held the whole world's innocence. When she laughs, it's like a sound I haven't heard in years, like a spark in a dark room. She calls me Amy sometimes by mistake. The first time she did it, I broke down crying. She ran up to me frightened and said, "Did I say something wrong?" I hugged her tightly and whispered, "No, Mary John, you said everything right." Since then, I've learned not to correct her. Maybe in some strange way, God gave me another chance, a way to be her mother again through this child. The world, of course, has moved on. No one remembers Sana anymore. Not the neighbors, not the police, not the ones who whispered behind our backs. Adil remarried a year later, to a woman much younger. People said, he deserves happiness too. I wanted to laugh. Happiness? The man who destroyed a life found peace, while the one who gave life lives in pain. That's how unfair the world is. It forgives monsters faster than it forgives victims. Sometimes I see him in the marketplace. He always looks the same, neatly dressed, composed, smiling that same empty smile. Our eyes meet for a brief moment, and he looks away first. That's the only power I have left over him, the fact that he can't look me in the eye. One evening, Aisha came home from school, holding a drawing. She ran to me, excited. "Daddy, look, it's our family." She showed me the picture. 3 stick figures, 1 tall man, 1 woman with a scarf, and 1 small girl holding both their hands. "Who's this?" I asked softly, pointing to the woman. "That's Amy," she said. "She lives in the sky, remember? But she still holds our hands when we walk." I stared at the drawing, my eyes filling with tears. "Yes, Beta, she always will." She smiled proudly. "My teacher asked why I draw her in the clouds. I said because she's my guardian angel." I pulled her close, my voice breaking. "She is, Mary John. She's watching over you every second." And for a moment, just a brief moment, I felt warmth again. Like Sana was right there with us, smiling through her daughter's laughter. Every Sunday, I take Aisha to visit her mother's grave. We bring white roses, her favorite. She always asks the same question: "Why do people die, Daddy?" I tell her, because sometimes, when the world becomes too cruel, Allah calls the kind ones back sooner. She frowns. "That's not fair." "No, it's not," I say, brushing her hair gently. "But it means we have to live kindly for them, to finish what they couldn't." She thinks for a moment, then nods seriously. "Then I'll be brave for Amy." That's the moment I realized, maybe Sana's story didn't end with her death. Maybe it began again, through her daughter. There are nights when I still can't sleep. The memories come back, the laughter, the bruises, the arguments, the tears. I replay every choice I made, every silence I kept, and I wonder if I had screamed louder, would she still be here? But guilt is a cruel companion. It keeps you awake, but it never answers. So now I use the guilt differently. I tell her story. I've started visiting women's centers, the kind of places I never knew existed before Sana. I sit with young girls, mothers, wives. I tell them about my daughter, her smile, her courage, her pain. I tell them not to wait, not to hide, not to believe that silence will save them. And when one of them whispers, "But no one will believe me," I take her hand and say, "Then I will." Because no one believed my daughter, and I will not let that happen again. Aisha sometimes listens when I talk to these women at home. One night, she asked me, "Daddy, what does brave mean?" I smiled. "It means to tell the truth even when your voice shakes." She thought for a moment, "Then Amy was brave, right?" My throat tightened. "Yes, Beta, she was the bravest person I ever knew." She nodded proudly. "Then I'll be brave like her." I looked at her, that tiny, innocent face glowing in the lamplight, and I knew Sana's strength hadn't died with her. It had passed on, quietly, powerfully. Imran has changed too. Guilt reshaped him. He donates to women's shelters now, though he never tells anyone. He visits Sana's grave every Friday, always alone. I once followed him quietly. I saw him kneel by her headstone, his shoulders trembling, whispering something I couldn't hear. When he came home, he sat beside me for the first time in months. "Do you think she can forgive me?" he asked softly. I looked at him. "She already did, you just need to forgive yourself." He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I wish I could start over. I wish I had believed her sooner. I touched his hand gently. "Then believe every woman who comes after her. That's how you start over." He looked at me for a long time, then whispered, "I will." That was the closest we've come to peace. Last month, Aisha's school held a family day. Each child had to bring someone who inspired them. She brought me. When her teacher asked why, she stood up and said, "Because my daddy is strong. She takes care of me and she helps other people. And my Amy in heaven told me to be brave like her." The entire room went silent. I couldn't stop the tears, but they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of pride, too. Because somehow, through all the pain, something good had survived. Sometimes, when the nights are long and quiet, I sit by the window and talk to her, my Sana. I did what you asked, Beta, I whisper. I told your story, I told them you tried. I imagine her smiling, the way she used to when she was little. I know, Amy, she'd say, you did good. And then I close my eyes and listen, to the wind, to the silence, to her voice hidden somewhere in both. The world still hasn't changed much. There are still Sanas out there, crying behind closed doors, being told to stay quiet, to adjust, to forgive. But I have hope now, because every time a woman speaks, I see my daughter in her courage. Maybe that's what survival really means, not forgetting, but transforming pain into purpose. I once thought my story ended the day she died, but now I know it only began there. Her story became my voice. My voice will become my granddaughter's strength. And maybe, just maybe, one day the world will finally learn to listen before it's too late. This morning, Aisha woke up early. The sun was barely out, painting the sky pink and gold. She climbed into my lap, holding a crumpled paper in her hand. "What's this?" I asked. "It's a poem," she said shyly, "for Amy." She read aloud, her little voice soft but sure. "My Amy is in the sky so high. She watches me when I laugh or cry. She tells me to speak, to never hide, and hold my daddy's hand with pride." I hugged her tightly, my tears falling into her hair. "It's beautiful," I whispered. She looked up at me, smiling. "Amy told me to write it in my dream." My heart clenched. Did she? Aisha nodded. "She said she's proud of you, Daddy. She said you made her voice loud again." I couldn't breathe for a moment. I just held her and closed my eyes. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe it was real. But in that moment, I felt Sana with us. Not in the past, not in the sky, but right there in our hearts. As the sun rose higher, I walked outside with Isha. The wind was gentle, carrying the faint scent of jasmine, Sana's favorite. Isha ran ahead, her laughter echoing down the street, bright and free. I stood there, watching her, and whispered one last time. "You tried, Beta, and because of you others will speak, others will live." I looked up at the sky, where the clouds parted just enough to let the light through. And I swear, for a second, I saw her smiling. The kind of smile that doesn't fade with time. The kind that says, "I'm finally at peace."